Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of the USS Liberty, gazing at the stars through the vast forward viewport. The ship had been on a deep space mission for 3 months, charting the farthest reaches of human expansion, regions where no vessel had ever ventured. At 45, Jake had spent nearly half his life commanding starships. But today felt different. Today, discovery seemed not only possible, but imminent. Captain Lisa Grant approached, a data pad in hand. She served as the ship's tactical officer, and Jake considered her one of the sharpest minds he'd worked with. Lisa was 38, calm under pressure, brilliant, and focused. Her brown hair was neatly pulled back into a ponytail, and her green eyes were sharp, alert, and always calculating. "Admiral, we're picking up unusual readings in the next system," she said, holding out the screen. 3 large objects, moving in formation. They're not asteroids or random debris. These are ships, sir. Jake felt a jolt in his chest. Humanity had roamed the stars for 2 centuries, building colonies and studying worlds, but had never encountered intelligent life. The idea had always lingered, an ever-present possibility, but now it wasn't a theory. It was happening. "How big are they?" Jake asked. "Each vessel is about twice the size of the Liberty," Lisa replied. "They're approaching the outer planets in the system." Jake's eyes narrowed. "There are human research teams on 2 of those worlds." She nodded. Research stations Alpha and Beta had been established 5 years earlier to study rare mineral deposits in the system. Each housed around 50 personnel, scientists, engineers, even families with children. They were civilians, unarmed, and potentially in danger. "Send a message," Jake said. "Use standard first contact protocol. Tell them we come in peace and want to initiate communication." Lieutenant Ben Rogers, the ship's communications officer, got to work. At 26, Ben had joined the crew 2 years earlier and specialized in linguistics. He had studied every known human language, dreaming that one day he might decode an alien one. "Message sent, Admiral," Ben reported. "We're broadcasting on all frequencies using mathematical patterns and universal symbols. If they're intelligent, they'll recognize the intent to communicate." They waited. 20 minutes passed. No reply. The ships kept moving toward the inhabited planets. A knot formed in Jake's stomach. Why no response? "Try again," he said. "Include visual data, images of humans of our ship. Let them see we're explorers, not a threat." Ben transmitted the second message. Again, the bridge waited. 10 minutes later, the answer came. But it wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of audio or symbols, the aliens responded with a video transmission that made every crew member on the bridge freeze in stunned silence. The figure in the footage was tall and covered in black scales that shimmered faintly. 4 muscular arms hung at its sides. Its crimson eyes glowed with an intensity that chilled the air. Its mouth, filled with jagged teeth, twisted into something that might have been a smile. The alien spoke. Its voice was guttural, cold, like stone grinding against steel. The translation matrix flickered, deciphering the foreign language rapidly. "I am Commander Zekron of..." Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, his eyes fixed on the vast field of stars beyond the wide viewport. For the last 3 months, the ship had been venturing across the outer boundaries of human space, uncharted regions where no one had previously dared to go. Jake was 45 years old, with over half his life spent in command of ships across the void. But something about today felt different. Today, they might stumble onto something new, something unimaginable. Captain Lisa Grant approached, holding a data pad. She was the tactical officer aboard the Liberty and one of the finest Jake had ever served with. Lisa, 38, was intelligent, composed, and precise under pressure. Her brown hair was tied back in a tight ponytail, and her piercing green eyes were always alert. "Admiral, We're receiving strange readings from the nearby system, Lisa said, handing over the pad. 3 large objects. They're flying in formation. She paused. They aren't asteroids. And they're definitely not natural. They're ships, sir. Jake felt his pulse quicken. For 200 years, humanity had wandered the stars alone, found planets, built outposts, but had never encountered intelligent life. The possibility had always existed. Now it appeared to be fact. How big are they? Jake asked. Each one is roughly twice the size of the Liberty, Lisa replied. They're slowly heading toward the outer planets of the system. Jake frowned. We've got research teams on 2 of those planets. She nodded. Research stations Alpha and Beta had been constructed 5 years earlier to examine the rare minerals in the area. Each facility housed around 50 personnel, scientists, engineers, and their families, innocent people doing vital work, and now, possibly in harm's way. Send a message, Jake ordered. Follow standard first contact protocols. Tell. Then we come in peace. Let's try to open a dialogue. At the communications console, Lieutenant Ben Rogers got to work. Ben, 26, had been with the crew for 2 years. A gifted linguist, he'd studied every human dialect, always hoping for the day he'd try to decipher an alien one. Message sent, Admiral, Ben said. We're broadcasting on all known frequencies using mathematical language and basic symbolic logic. If they're intelligent, they'll recognize it as an attempt to communicate. They waited. 20 long minutes passed. No reply. The mysterious ships continued their slow, deliberate approach toward the planets hosting human researchers. Anxiety twisted in Jake's gut. Why weren't they responding? Try again, Jake said. Add visual content this time. Photos of humans, our ship, peaceful gestures. Let's show them we're explorers, not a threat. Ben adjusted the transmission and sent it once more. The bridge fell into a tense silence. After 10 more minutes, the aliens replied. But the response defied every expectation. There were no symbols, no decipherable language. Instead, a video feed flickered to life, one that caused every crew member on the bridge to stop and stare in alarm. The being on the screen was tall, covered in thick, dark scales. It had 4 arms, glowing red eyes, and a maw filled with vicious teeth. When it spoke, its voice was sharp and brutal, like metal, grinding on stone. The ship's translator began decoding the alien language at once. I am Commander Zekron of the Empire, just as all others have. The transmission ended, replaced by a final video sequence that made Jake's stomach turn. Zelthari. Soldiers were shown executing captured humans, kneeling them one by one before burning them alive with energy weapons. Jake saw terrified men and women pleading for mercy, only to be cut down seconds later. He closed his eyes. A decision formed, clear, unwavering, final. The Zelthari believed humans were weak. They believed they could massacre civilians and go unchallenged. They were about to learn they'd made the gravest mistake in their empire's history. Set a course for Earth, Jake commanded. Maximum speed. The government needs to see what we've found. As the USS Liberty accelerated toward home, Jake's thoughts remained with the murdered researchers and the families they would never return to. The Zelthari Empire had just declared war on humanity, but they had no idea what they had provoked. President Alex Turner sat at the head of the emergency council table, his face rigid as he replayed the video from the Liberty for a 3rd time. The images of obliterated research outposts and murdered innocents left him sickened. Still, he kept watching. Everyone in that room had to understand exactly what they faced. General Kate Phillips leaned forward, fury etched into her expression. At 52, Kate had served as Earth's military commander for nearly a decade. She had fought through 3 major wars and lost countless soldiers, but this was different. This was butchery, cold and deliberate. The way they killed those families, she muttered, voice tight. How long do we have? President, Turner asked. Admiral Jake Morrison, who had landed back on Earth just 6 hours earlier, glanced at his wrist. 28 days, sir. The Zelthari gave us 30 to surrender all human colonies and vessels. They made it very clear what happens if we don't. At the far end of the room, Dr. Ryan Cooper was typing rapidly on his tablet. Ryan was 39, a genius who had spent 15 years developing experimental technologies others dismissed as fantasy. He looked up now, eyes sharp. There was the hint of something dangerous in his smile. Mr. President, Ryan said, I think it's time I show you something. He stood and tapped his tablet. For the last 10 years, we've been developing systems we hoped we'd never use. But after seeing that footage, he paused. Hope has run out. The lights dimmed. In the center of the room, a holographic projection shimmered into life. Strange ships rotated slowly in the air, sleek, predatory vessels, dark as the void itself. Their forms bent light unnaturally, cloaked in angles that seemed wrong to the eye. We call them ghost ships, Ryan said. They're built using stealth tech so advanced, they're invisible to nearly all modern sensor systems. But that's just the beginning. The image shifted, showing weapon systems unlike anything the Council had seen before. These aren't standard weapons. They don't just destroy enemy ships, they erase them utterly. No debris, no signal, nothing left. Colonel Amy Stewart, commander of Earth's Special Operations Forces, gave a curt nod of approval. At 41, she had been involved in the Ghost Ship program since its inception. She was quiet, small in stature, but everyone at the table understood that she was likely the most dangerous person in the room. The Zelthari believe war is about honor, Amy said. Ritualized combat, rules, duels between ships. They have no understanding of what true war looks like, what we become when we stop pretending to be civilized. President Turner studied the projected ghost ship schematics. The vessels didn't even look human. Their sleek, ominous shapes seemed like something pulled from a nightmare. How many do we have operational? He asked. 47 fully built and combat ready, Ryan replied. Over 100 more in different stages of construction. Each one only needs a 12-person crew, but their destructive capability is equal to a traditional fleet of 200. General Phillips brought up a galactic map displaying known Zelthari-controlled territory. The Empire stretched across more than 200 star systems and fielded a military force of thousands of ships. They hadn't lost a war in 3 centuries. Even with the Ghost Fleet, we're heavily outnumbered, Kate said. They have more ships, more troops, and centuries of combat experience. In a fair fight, we don't stand a chance. Colonel Stewart gave a cold smile. With respect, General, we're not going to fight a fair war. The Zelthari Empire is about to find out why humans have survived everything our planet ever threw at us. We don't just endure, we innovate. And when we innovate for war, the results are monstrous. Amy brought up a new display, one that made several council members visibly uncomfortable. Weapons that bent ethical boundaries into unrecognizable shapes. Viral bombs capable of corrupting enemy systems and turning their tech against them. Nanomachines that could infiltrate ship infrastructure and gradually drive the crew into madness. Programs engineered specifically to break morale and destroy psychological resistance. They executed our people without warning, Amy continued. To them, fear is a weapon, something they use to dominate the weak. But we've studied fear. We've learned how to weaponize it in ways they can't even imagine. By the time we're done, they won't dare close their eyes. From the far side of the table, Commander Steve Mitchell finally spoke. He had listened in silence until now. Steve was 44, head of Earth's Black Ops division for over a decade. The kind of man who could walk into a hostile stronghold and walk out without leaving evidence he was ever there. Mr. President, Steve said, voice calm and deadly, give me 6 months, and I'll turn the Zelthari's own empire into a minefield. My teams can infiltrate their supply routes, hijack their communications, sabotage their data networks. By the time we're ready to strike, openly, half their fleet will be tearing itself apart, Steve finished. Dr. Cooper activated another projection, this one displaying Earth's industrial infrastructure. Shipyards that once produced peaceful exploration vessels were now retooled for warship construction. Civilian manufacturing plants were converting to produce weapons that violated half a dozen galactic treaties, none of which humanity had ever signed. The beauty of being unknown, Ryan said, is that no one knows what you're capable of. The Zelthari expect us to build massive cruisers with oversized cannons and meet them in glorious battle. Instead, we're going to blindside them, with weapons they don't understand and tactics they've never seen. President Turner glanced around the table. These were people he trusted, scientists, tacticians, warriors. People who had spent their lives preparing to protect humanity. Now, they were designing a war the galaxy wouldn't see coming. "What about our colonies?" the president asked. "We've got civilian populations on 63 worlds. If we retaliate, the Zelthari will strike back at them." General Phillips was ready. "Sir, we've already started relocating non-essential personnel from outer colonies. Those who remain are being moved into secure, reinforced facilities underground. If they target civilians," Colonel Stewart added, "they'll find empty cities. And if they try to go further than that, let's just say we've left them some surprises. Anyone foolish enough to target non-combatants will learn why that's a fatal mistake." The room fell into a heavy silence as the president contemplated the full scale of what was about to begin. After several long moments, he looked to Admiral Morrison. "Jake," he said, "send a message to this Commander Zekron. Tell him humanity respectfully declines their generous offer of surrender. Tell him we look forward to showing them what real war looks like." Morrison nodded, his face grim. "What should I say about our response timeline?" President Turner's expression darkened. "Tell them they have 28 days to remove themselves from human space. After that, we stop talking. We start teaching them why every species on Earth learned to fear humans, long before we ever reached the stars." As the council adjourned, each member departed with orders that would reshape human society into something no alien empire had ever imagined. The Zelthari had demanded obedience from a species they thought weak, primitive. What they would get was a war that would redefine the very meaning of combat. The countdown had begun. Fleet Admiral Zaktar stood tall upon the bridge of the Domination, his personal warship, as 300 Zelthari vessels moved in seamless formation. Each ship was a fortress, loaded with firepower and plating tested through centuries of conquest. Together, they represented the wrath of an empire that had crushed 47 civilizations before this one. Zaktar was certain this campaign would be his swiftest victory yet. The humans had rejected the Empire's benevolent offer of surrender, not unexpected. Every species resisted at first. All of them had learned the truth soon enough. Today would follow the same pattern. "Admiral, we are nearing the human colony known as New Boston," reported Captain Vorak, Zaktar's second-in-command. "Our long-range scans detect no planetary defenses or local fleets. It appears the humans have abandoned their outer holdings." Zaktar nodded, satisfied. The cowards were already fleeing, even weaker than their intelligence reports had hinted. This would take days, not weeks. "Deploy battle formations," he ordered. "Prepare orbital bombardment of the colony, make." "Sure, the orbital strikes are visible from orbit," Zaktar ordered coldly. "I want every human colony to witness what defiance brings. Let this be a lesson burned into their skies." The Zelthari fleet expanded into its standard attack configuration. Disciplined, time-honed, flawless. Each warship slid into its predetermined slot like gears in an ancient, brutal machine. For centuries, this formation had crushed every opponent. Today, Zaktar expected nothing different. But as New Boston grew closer on the tactical display, a chill ran through him. The planet wasn't behaving as it should. There was no panic, no alerts, no mass evacuations, no last-minute pleas for surrender, just silence. An eerie, absolute silence. It felt more like a graveyard than a battlefield. Hidden behind New Boston's largest moon, Commander Ben Torres watched the alien fleet maneuver into place. His ship, the USS Ghostwalker, remained undetectable, cloaked by advanced stealth, tech that distorted energy and light around it like ripples in a stream. At 37, Ben was handpicked by Colonel Stewart for this operation. Cool under fire, creative in strategy, merciless when needed. Today, he'd need to be all three. "Sir, all civilians evacuated 3 days ago," Lieutenant Nina Parker reported from her console. "The surface is empty except for our surprise gifts. The Zelthari walked straight into it." Ben allowed himself a thin, grim smile. The aliens hadn't even conducted proper threat sweeps. Their arrogance had blinded them. That mistake would cost them dearly. "Signal the Ghost Fleet," Ben ordered. "Begin Phase 1. All across the system, 46 other cloaked human vessels received the command and silently moved into position. Invisible. Undetectable. Each one loaded with technology the Zelthari had never faced, because it had never existed until now. The Empire thought they were attacking a helpless colony. Instead, they'd wandered into the deadliest ambush in human history. Fleet Admiral Zdar was reviewing targeting data when his sensor officer frowned. "Admiral, we're detecting anomalous energy, signatures from the planet. They don't match any known tech." Zakhtar didn't have time to reply. From New Boston's surface, thousands of small objects erupted at blinding speed, streaking into space like guided stars. Too small for standard targeting systems, but each was lethal. They slammed into Zelthari, warships, and latched on like mechanical leeches. No explosions followed. Something worse began instead. The devices weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were viral. Each held millions of self-replicating nanobots designed to dissolve. Armor disrupt systems and spread like a corrosive disease. The alien fleet began to rot from within. "Admiral, something's wrong with the weapon grid," reported Captain Vorak. Panic edged into his tone. "Power fluctuations across the fleet. Shields dropping without reason." Zakhtar stared at his screens in disbelief. Red alerts bloomed across his command interface like bleeding wounds. His ships were failing, but there was no enemy in sight. No one to shoot, no threat to target. Then the Ghost Fleet decloaked, only for a breath. 47 human vessels appeared like wraiths around the Zelthari formation. They fired a single volley. No bright beams, no thunderous detonations. Then they vanished again. The Admiral watched in dawning horror as his flawless formation collapsed. Warships drifted off course, their crews abandoning consoles in panic. Some vessels fired wildly into empty space, tricked by human computer viruses that made them see threats where none existed. Commander Torres observed the chaos with grim satisfaction. The Zelthari had slaughtered innocents and vowed to eradicate humanity. Now they were learning what happened when they provoked a species that had spent millennia mastering the science of war. "Sir, should we board and take prisoners?" Lieutenant Parker asked. Ben shook his head. "Not yet. Let them sit there, trapped, in their dead ships, wondering what the hell they've started. Fear is our sharpest weapon right now. I want them paralyzed with it before we finish this." As the human Ghost Fleet faded back into invisibility, the Zelthari armada hung helpless in the void. Their crews were entombed in vessels turned into digital haunted houses. The Empire's perfect battle formation had been dismantled, without a single human life lost. Fleet Admiral Czar sat frozen in his command chair, watching his proud fleet unravel. For the first time, he truly grasped that the Zelthari Empire may have met a foe they could not defeat. Captain Joe Williams crouched in the shadows of the Zelthari supply hub, cloaked by a stealth suit that rendered him invisible to alien sensors. The facility was enormous, supplying 12 fleets across the region. In 30 minutes, he and his team would turn this lifeline into humanity's newest weapon. Joe, now 42, had led covert missions for 15 years. He was small, silent, and lethal, the kind of man who could stroll through enemy command centers and leave ghosts in his wake. Tonight, that talent would tilt the war. "Team lead, this is Sarah," Lieutenant Sarah White whispered through his earpiece. "I'm at the main terminal. Security's weaker than expected for a place this critical." Joe's lips curled. The aliens were so smug in their supremacy, they hadn't imagined human infiltration. Their entire strategy relied on massive fleets and formal warfare. The concept of sabotage from within was alien, literally. "Confirmed, Sarah," Joe replied, softly. "Start the upload. Let the failures be gradual. We want them blaming wear and tear." Aboard the USS Phantom, orbiting 50,000 meters away, Dr. Helen Murray monitored the mission. At 36, she was the most brilliant computer scientist humanity had ever produced. Over the past 6 months, she had crafted AI programs that mimicked Zelthari cognition, then used that understanding to fracture it. "Joe, upload's running flawlessly," she reported. "My AI viruses are spreading faster than anticipated. That depot will be ours by morning." Her creations weren't ordinary. Digital weapons. They didn't just crash systems. They studied Zelthari thought patterns and used their own psychology against them. Replicators began displaying grotesque hallucinations inside meals. Lights flickered in pulse patterns known to induce dread. Comms emitted faint whispers during moments of silence. At the terminal, Sarah typed furiously across the alien interface. She was 29, trained in xenotech for 3 years, ready for exactly this moment. "Team lead, something's off," she said tensely. "This isn't just a logistics hub, they're storing bioweapons here, engineered pathogens designed to wipe out humans." Joe felt ice in his veins. The Zelthari weren't planning conquest. They were preparing genocide. Every human on every world was marked for extinction. "Upload every detail on those weapons to Dr. Murray," Joe ordered. "And make sure our viruses hit those systems first. If they want to dabble in plagues, let them choke on their own experiments, his own people." Major Chris Adams guided his ground infiltration team through the ventilation shafts of a Zelthari military command facility on the planet Vortesh. Chris was 38 now and had seen combat since he turned 18. But nothing had prepared him for this. The Zelthari weren't simply foes. They were genocidal fanatics who had to be wiped out permanently. "Major, we're nearing the primary command nexus," whispered Sergeant Kelly Brown, crawling ahead in the tight shaft. "I can hear at least 20 Zelthari officers discussing a strike on human colonies." Chris checked his gear one final time. His team wasn't armed with standard weaponry. Instead, they carried bioagents crafted to devastate Zelthari biology. The aliens had once threatened to unleash viruses on human populations, so humanity responded in kind. They created diseases specifically to infect alien physiology. "Remember our objective," Chris murmured. "We're not here for a clean kill. Let the sickness spread slowly. We want them to contaminate other command centers before they catch on. By the time they realize, it'll be irreversible." One by one, the humans dropped silently into the command chamber below. Their stealth suits rendered them invisible, allowing them to move undetected among the alien officers. Each operative carried aerosol dispensers releasing engineered microbes, designed to trigger debilitating sickness within days. Dr. Helen Murray observed the incoming data feeds with satisfaction. Dozens of infiltration teams were reporting in from across Zelthari space. Her AI-driven viral codes had begun infiltrating the enemy's networks, turning their own systems into psychological weapons. "This is unreal, Helen," said Dr. Ryan Cooper over the secure link. "Your AI viruses breached the main Zelthari, Fleet Command. Intercepts say their admirals believe the ships are haunted. Tech is behaving unpredictably. Crew quarters echo with strange noises. Ghost signals are flooding emergency channels. Helen smiled. Her programs had begun adapting to Zalari neural patterns, learning their fear responses and amplifying them. Every few hours, lights aboard enemy vessels would flicker without cause, sparking panic over possible system failures. Food dispensers started producing meals that looked edible but reeked of decay. Gravity systems glitched just enough to unsettle the crew, never enough to prove sabotage, but enough to induce stress and confusion. Meanwhile, Captain Joe Williams and his team completed their sabotage at a critical Zelthari supply depot and prepared to exfiltrate. The aliens would never suspect human tampering, but in the coming weeks, every item stored there would break down during combat deployment. Mission complete, Joe reported back. Nanobots are deployed and lying dormant. Once Zelthari forces activate this gear, their weapons will misfire, shield generators will collapse, and their ships will be sitting ducks. Major Chris Adams led his team out of the command complex, leaving behind bioagents that would soon infiltrate the highest levels of the Zelthari chain of command. The infections weren't lethal, but they were designed to induce confusion, fever, and cognitive breakdown, rendering leadership incapable of coherent military decisions. "Command, this is Adams," Chris radioed. "Package delivered. Expect widespread illness among Zelthari command staff within 72 hours. Military coordination in this sector should deteriorate as infections reach adjacent bases." Back on Earth, Dr. Murray received the final updates from all deployed teams. She compiled the mission data into a classified report for Earth Command. In a single coordinated night, human special forces had infiltrated dozens of enemy facilities and infected every one of them with technological and biological weapons that crippled the Empire's capacity to make war. "President Turner," Helen began over a secure channel to Earth. "This is Dr. Murray. Operation Ghost Storm is complete. We've infiltrated Zelthari computer systems across a 121 star systems with AI viruses, contaminated supply depots with nanobots programmed to sabotage their hardware, and released tailored bioweapons into their command chain to disable leadership functions." Earth's response was swift and approving. "Excellent work, Doctor. How long until the Zelthari realize what's been done?" Helen double-checked her data. "Sir, based on infiltration timing and viral propagation, I estimate they'll face severe disruptions within a week. By the time they detect the attack, our countermeasures will be too widespread to stop." As human infiltration teams vanished into hidden ships and slipped back into the void, the Zelthari Empire continued its routine operations, unaware their territory had become a trap. In 7 days, they would learn that declaring war on humans was the gravest error in their civilization's long history. Emperor Vexmore sat atop his throne in Zelthar Prime's Grand Palace, staring at reports that defied reason. For 3 centuries, the Zelthari Empire had never tasted defeat, never ceded ground, never faced a threat they could not annihilate with overwhelming firepower. But in just 2 weeks, everything had shifted. Vexmore, aged over 4 centuries, had personally led the subjugation of 23 species. His arms bore the scars of countless battles, and his crimson eyes had seen all manners of war. But nothing in his experience matched what humans had unleashed. "Your Majesty," General Kekstar said nervously as he approached the throne, "we have more troubling news. Admiral Zar's entire fleet has been found drifting. Crews are alive, but refuse to board the ships. They claim the vessels are haunted by human spirits." Vexmore crushed the steel armrest of his throne with a single clawed fist. Haunted ships, viruses that targeted only commanders, machinery failing at precisely the worst times. These humans weren't soldiers. They were demons wielding weapons that made reality itself their ally. "What of our biological weapons program?" the Emperor roared. "Surely we can unleash our own plagues against them?" General Kekstar's face paled. "Your Majesty, our bioweapons labs have been infiltrated. Humanity could strike anywhere in the Empire, whenever they chose. Emperor Vexmore was reviewing emergency reports when every alarm in his palace began to scream at once. His guards burst into the throne room, scaled faces contorted in terror. "Your Majesty!" gasped Captain Mork, head of palace security. "Human ships have appeared in orbit over Zelthar Prime. But that's not the worst of it. They've simultaneously appeared above every major world in the Empire. Our entire network has been penetrated without detection." For the first time, in 4 centuries, the Emperor felt something alien, crippling, soul-deep terror. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleets. They had turned his empire into a cage. Every system, every fortress, every ship, trapped and helpless. Admiral Morrison received Earth's go-ahead and activated fleet-wide communications. His broadcast would reach every Zelthari world at once. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Federation," he said evenly. "2 weeks ago, your empire murdered civilians and threatened to erase our species. Today, we're here to discuss terms for your surrender." The word surrender echoed across Zelthari space like a thunderclap. No one in their long, brutal history had ever dared utter that demand. Until now. "We could destroy every Zelthari world right now," Morrison continued. "Our weapons are locked, your defenses are down, and your fleets are crippled. But humanity prefers peace to genocide. We offer you one chance to end this war without total annihilation." Commander Clark led his diplomatic team to Zelthar Prime. In the throne room, Emperor Vexmore waited, broken and silent. The meeting was short. The humans presented their terms. The Emperor had no choice but to accept. The Zelthari would pay reparations for the massacres. They would withdraw from all space within 50 light-years of human territory, and they would broadcast the truth. What happened when someone dared to strike humanity unprovoked? Captain Laura Davis oversaw the deployment of monitoring stations throughout former Zelthari territory. Each appeared harmless but carried the same advanced tech that had shattered the Empire. "Captain, the network is fully online," reported her technician. "Every major Zelthari base and fleet is under constant surveillance. If they make a move, we'll know." Laura nodded. The war was done. Peace, however, would be enforced, by strength and by memory. Years later, when other species asked the Zelthari about their fall, they shared stories that spread like wildfire. Stories of humans, not as mere conquerors, but as something far worse, a civilization that wielded psychological warfare like a scalpel, that made war into an instrument of existential fear. That didn't fight to win. They fought to ensure no one dared challenge them again, and they succeeded.